showing the strength of support for Labour in Reading and across the Thames Valley. I just wanted to say a few brief words. I'm Matt Rodder. I'm the Labour parliamentary candidate for Reading East. Reading has two marginal seats, Reading East and Reading West, seats that we're working very hard to win. These are the sorts of seats Labour needs to win to form a Labour government. And I hope today, having Jeremy here, will lift our spirits and take us forward in that battle for those seats. I would just like to say thank you so much to Jeremy for coming, to giving us his time today. He has a very busy schedule. Let's give him a round of applause. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your support for Matt. This man is going to be your MP Friday week, okay? That means you've got to put a bit of effort into making sure he does become your MP. Are you all up for that? So it is campaigning, it is talking, it is getting that message across. But I would also like to say a message of sympathy and sorrow to Reading on not getting through in the football. As a very keen football supporter, I know just how painful these things are. But I had a good weekend. I was at the cup final with Arsenal. Yay! Yeah, I wasn't expecting any applause for that at all. And, please don't go any further with that particular line of discussion. This morning we were pointing out just what 5 more years of a Tory government will do. That's the absolutely correct response. Thank you. John Ashworth and Angela Rayner and I presented a document to our friends in the media about just what another 5 years will mean. Think through the crisis that exists in almost every hospital in the country at the present time. Think through the waiting lists to get elective surgery. Think through the delays in A&E departments. Think through those older people stuck in a hospital bed and they can't leave because the social care is not available. Think of those million people all across the country waiting for the social care package that hasn't yet come. Then think on our schools. Is it right that head teachers should be encouraged to have collecting buckets at the school gate in order to fund the schools? No. Is it right that so many of our children come to school hungry and go home hungry as well? No. And is it right that so many of our children are now in classes well over 30, what we now term supersized classes, and the teachers deeply stressed out by this, and many sadly leaving the profession as a result of it? Then look further on in education, the underfunding of our secondary schools, the loss of educational maintenance allowance, meaning those students from working class backgrounds did not go on to college until we introduced them. And then think of the university students leaving with debts of £50,000 and more because they tried to get an education. What we're doing is simply pointing out what another 5 years of a Tory government would mean. 5 years of underfunding, 5 years of cuts, 5 years of lost opportunities. And the stress that causes to so many families and young people. And so we're quite simply saying this: we have a programme and a manifesto for the many, not the few. It is a carefully worked out programme, it is a realistic programme, and it is a fully costed programme. And it will cost, yes, more in taxation at the top end. Corporation tax will go up a bit, and all those tax reliefs and giveaways to the very rich will change. And we're doing this because we believe it's time for a change in this country. We cannot go on with the narrative that the next generation is always going to be worse off than this generation. You'll have less healthcare, you'll have less housing, you'll have less in education, you'll pay for more and more and more as you go through life. I just don't accept that is correct. We are a wealthy country. We live in a highly technical age. We live in an age when almost anything is possible if you get the politics right to distribute the wealth and the opportunity fairly across all elements of society. But in this country, we're not doing any of that. And so, Angela very proudly put forward her views and our plan on education. And I have to say I'm very proud of Angela Rayner. She had a difficult upbringing. She didn't achieve everything she wanted to or could have done at school. And as she says, she was helped to achieve in life by Sure Start that was introduced by the last Labour government. And Angela totally values education and the opportunities that it gives for everyone. And so we've put forward our plans. Firstly, 30 hours per week free childcare for 2 to 4 year olds for the whole country. And that's preschool, nursery places, social interaction, play is something that is so important. Bringing children together, all of them, for those places, and it will be paid for, and it will cost 4.8 billion extra to do it. But I see it as absolutely right to do that because it's an investment in the futures of those children and indeed of all of us. Because children that don't get those nursery places, don't get those good preschool facilities, sadly are likely to achieve less when they go on to primary school, less in secondary, and less likely to get to university. I am fed up with a country dominated by the postcode lottery of the wealth of your parents if you're likely to get to university or not. I want it there for all of our children. And in primary schools, I mentioned hungry children find it hard to learn. Children coming to school hungry, many of them helped out by decent, wonderful teachers who dip into their wallets and handbags in order to help the children out. It shouldn't be like that, and it shouldn't ever be like that, and that's why our manifesto quite clearly says we will introduce and pay for a free school meal for every child in every primary school in the country. And the experience of those children growing up together, in school together, eating together, is surely a message to them about our world, our society, that you work with each other and you pay for it through taxation, which is fair in that it falls a bigger burden on the richest, a least burden on the poorest. Surely that is basic in social justice in our minds. And we will probably fund our primary schools. And in the case of this area, we're going to stand up against any council that's trying to close down schools, particularly Tory county councils that don't understand the passion people have on schools. Because going on from there, I want our students to go on to college, to go on and do A-levels, to go on and do technical education, to go on and make the best of their lives. That's why we will return the educational maintenance allowance, which will help students to stay on after leaving school. And for those that go to university, we studied this very carefully, and it's a very big call and will cost a lot of money. We believe it is right that we end the university fee system and guarantee support for every student going to university by ending university fees. And people say to me, why are you doing all this? I'll tell you this. If you're a child growing up in an unregulated, expensive, private rented flat somewhere, with 6 months short old tenancy, maybe moving on, sometimes having to move primary school, you're not likely to be achieving too much in school. You take it on, and that child doesn't achieve their potential. And then you measure it in two ways. One is that child has not achieved their potential. They haven't become the doctor, the engineer, the tradesperson. They haven't become whatever they wanted to be, whatever their ambition was. They lose out. We lose out because we haven't got that doctor, that nurse, that engineer, that teacher that we could have had we invested in our education system in the first place. So I am utterly determined that we will achieve everything that Angela set out this morning. And there's another aspect to it which isn't so expensive, but to me is very important. Education is, of course, about learning the important subjects and the basic skills that you need for life. That's obviously key and central to education. But there's also the creative and the imaginative that's in all of us. Every child has massive imagination. You talk to children, they dream all kinds of things. They paint the most extraordinary things. They have a free spirit about them. And as they get older, they might want to develop those skills. They might want to develop their musical ability. Sadly, too few schools have music. Sadly, too few towns are able to afford youth orchestras and music that goes with it. And so, we will fund a pupil arts premium for every child in every school so they can all learn a musical instrument. And building on the huge achievements of the Harold Wilson Labour governments in the 1960s, which established the Arts Council and the Open University, we want to have a cultural fund for the whole country so that we do support local theatres, we do support libraries, we do support all that cultural activity, but we also recognise that young musicians need some space to play and need some opportunity to develop their skills. As we build a stronger economy and protect our services, let's also encourage that free spirit and imagination that's there in all of us. Set the people free to imagine the best they can for the future. And our health service is, to me, the proudest achievement of the Labour Party. Up until the Second World War, there was no universal free health system in Britain. There was a patchwork of it. And as Harry Leslie Smith describes, those that couldn't afford an operation frankly died because of it. There are some countries in the world, many countries in the world, that still have that. If you're in the United States, if you're lucky, you've got a good insurance policy because your employer's paid for one for you. If you're unlucky, you've got no access to good health care at all. If you're young Americans, you often have a chat in a bar about what kind of health insurance policy you've got. We have a National Health Service for a purpose and a reason. It was founded by people with vision. The vision that healthcare should be a right, free at the point of use for everybody. But it is under threat. It is under threat because of underfunding, it's under threat because of privatisation, it's under threat because of the operations of the Health and Social Care Act put through by the Conservatives with Liberal Democrat support during the last Parliament. And so we will guarantee investment for the NHS over the lifetime of Parliament. We will also guarantee funding for social care so that social care crisis is ended. We don't do this lightly, but we do it because we believe it. We believe in a health service for all. We also believe you have to tackle the health inequalities. Even in a town like Reading or any other town, you live in place A, your life expectancy is a bit shorter than if you live somewhere else. And you could do that all across the country. That's not right. That's absolutely not right. We have to invest fairly all across the whole country. But at the moment, our NHS is in crisis. Every hospital running into debts and overdraft. Every hospital wondering how it can cope. A&E nurses and doctors stressed out beyond belief with the situation they're facing. And so, what John Ashworth will do when he becomes the Health Secretary is suspend the sustainability and transformation plans and look again at the provision of A&E departments all over the country to make sure they're there. And there is another aspect to it. If we continue this underfunding of social care, and if the government can't give an answer on how much they're going to take out of somebody's value of their home or anything else, then I suggest people look at the Labour alternative, which is to put money in now to end the crisis in social care and develop a national social care service. Because, as with all aspects of public cuts, public spending cuts and austerity, who pays the price? The poorest and most vulnerable. Who pays the price when there isn't social care available? Who has to give up their job in order to care for somebody? A disabled child, perhaps, or an older person suffering dementia, or many, many other conditions. It's nearly always the women in the household who have to give up their jobs, their lives and their careers in order to care for people. Our philosophy is totally different. We think we, as a community, should take responsibility for it and properly fund health and social care. And I am very determined on one other aspect of the health service, and that is the crisis in mental health. 1 in 4 of us in this wonderful meeting here today, during our lifetime, will suffer some kind of mental health crisis. Deep stress, deep depression, many things. Some of us will be well cared for and well treated and will feel able to talk to others around it and get support. Others, sadly, will not. Too many young people get into very dark places and take their own lives because there's nobody there to support them. And it's a crisis, it's a tragedy, and anyone that's ever attended the funeral of a teenager who'd taken their own life whilst in deep stress would feel the hurt that the whole family is going through as a result of it. It's no solution to cut the number of mental health nurses. It's no solution to underfund our mental health services. It's no solution not to have those emergency beds available and treatment and support and therapy available very quickly. And so we will ensure mental health is properly funded, and I'm looking forward to appointing a minister solely to deal with mental health and social care so that we do deal with this crisis properly. Health and education are two very crucial areas of our lives and very crucial areas of what we're offering in this election. But it's also about how our society develops, how our economy develops, because there is a gross imbalance. We have 6 million people earning less than the living wage in Britain. We have 1 million people on 0 hours contracts, not knowing what their income is from one week to the other, waking up each morning, staring at the phone, wondering if they've got a text message offering them any work for the rest of the day. That is wrong, not necessary, and not really very efficient. And so we will end 0 hours contracts. We will introduce a living wage of £10 an hour by 2020. And we will guarantee rights at work from day one so that you can be represented, and we will not charge people for going to tribunals trying to get justice. But it's also about the kind of economy we develop in this country. It's how we develop that economy. Because it is imbalanced, because there is a need to negotiate with the European Union to guarantee tariff-free trade access to the European market. I'm absolutely determined to achieve that so that we can protect manufacturing industry and manufacturing jobs in this country that have a supply chain in Europe and vice versa. We are leaving the European Union, but I am utterly determined that we will achieve that tariff-free access and will protect the rights and conditions that we achieved through EU membership, and we will protect the rights of all EU nationals living here to remain living here permanently with their families. But For the economy to grow, it requires investment. It requires investment in all parts of the country. That means a national investment bank that is regionally based, so that these wonderful start-up high-tech businesses that are mushrooming all along the Thames Valley, all along the corridor, they should be supported. I want that innovation of sustainable industries. I want those clean, green energy jobs of the future. They don't come out of thin air, but a national investment bank investing in those enterprises makes a big difference and develops us as an economy for the future. We invest less than any other industrialized country. And for former mining or steel-making areas who've seen precious little investment for a very long time, we will put the money in there necessary to build the infrastructure those areas need and give the job opportunities for all of those people that live in those areas. And so when the Conservatives called this election, they called this election thinking it was going to be all over. They thought it was just a matter of the Prime Minister going around the country and conveniently not mentioning the name of the party that she leads. I'll let her know it's called the Conservative Party, otherwise known as the Tory Party. And indeed, I heard her once calling it the Nasty Party, but I don't want to tread on sort of family difficulties there. But something has happened. Something has happened over the last few weeks. There were 7 weeks for this election campaign. We're now less than 10 days, 8 days away from the election itself. And do you know what's happened? Thousands and thousands of people have heard our manifesto. They've downloaded it, they've read it, they've bought it, they've looked into it, they've asked questions about it, they've made contributions on how we could put it forward. And thousands of people contributed to that manifesto through our Labour Party membership, through our trade union membership, and lots of voluntary organisations that sent in lots of good ideas. It's a manifesto that will transform this country because it will be for everybody, not for the few. And for the first time, we'll be rolling back that whole agenda which says you deal with the banking crisis of 2008 by making the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, those on housing waiting lists, or anybody else at the lower levels of pay in society pay the price for it. I say, enough. Let's invest in the future, not pay the price of that austerity. And so, look around you. Look around you at this wonderful gathering here today. We're young, we're old, we're black, we're white, we're gay, we're straight, we're able, we're disabled. We're all kinds of things. We're everybody. We are united in what we're trying to achieve. And so we're not running this election campaign of pitting the older generation against the younger generation. We're not running this election campaign blaming minority X for what happened to minority Y. We're not running that kind of campaign. We're running a campaign which brings people together, because we want a society that brings people together. But you know what? Societies united, working together, there's nothing they can't achieve. There's nothing they can't achieve in education, in health, in housing, in the creative industries. All those things for the future. Another 5 years of a Tory government. What kind of housing? What kind of education? What kind of healthcare? What kind of employment practices would be in operation? We know their strategy, which is to give a further £60 billion back to the very richest in our society and the biggest corporations. Our proposal is actually very modest. No tax rises at all for 95% of the population. No increase in national insurance. But increases and chasing down tax avoidance and tax evasion in order to build the kind of society we want in the future. And so, in the last week of this campaign, I ask you all to do this. Yes, knock on doors for our party. Yes, identify all those that are going to vote for my friend here and make sure they do. But also, don't do it in just a mechanical, transactional way. Have that conversation. Have that conversation with people. who may have been misled by some of our newspapers about the role of our party or the views I may or may not hold, but have that conversation and say, what kind of society do you want to live in? Are you comfortable that every night there are thousands of people sleeping on our streets and begging around the railway stations? Are you comfortable that there is such grotesque levels of inequality in our society and getting worse? Or do you want to elect a government that will do something different with the support of the people, which will develop the health, the housing, the education, and will provide opportunities for all across the spectrum, so that we have a more cohesive and coherent society in the future? And for all the cynical commentators, do you know what's happening is, everywhere I go, all over the country, the rallies get bigger, the crowds get bigger, the enthusiasm gets bigger, the determination gets bigger. And that gives us a chance to do something very, very special on June the 8th. And it's very odd that you have an election campaign where we go out and talk to people all the time, and the Prime Minister seems to have difficulty in meeting anyone or having a debate. And so there is a debate in Cambridge tonight. I don't know what she's doing this evening, but it's not far from London. I invite her to go to Cambridge and debate her policies, debate her record, debate their plans, debate their... and let the public make up their mind. Is it to be this, or is it to be the opposite? More cuts, more closure, more division, more stress, more pressure. It's time to get out there and get that message. It's time to get people fully behind our message. It's time to vote Labour on June the 8th. Thank you very much.